Welcome to Growth Architects, a podcast for tech entrepreneurs, product innovators, and marketing strategists. Whether you're searching for product market fit, exploring new growth channels, or trying to avoid common startup pitfall, this is where you'll find proven strategies to fuel your success. And now, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Growth Architects. My guest today is Chris from Conversion Alchemy. With him today, we're going to discuss all the ins and outs of great copy that converts. Chris, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Hey, Federico. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, first of all, how would you introduce yourself to the ones that don't know you?
I say that I'm the conversion alchemist, but that's because of my brand. But mostly I'm a recovered software engineer. And by that, I mean, I was a software engineer, did that for 10 years back in Italy, where I'm from. And then I transitioned into marketing, mostly because I wanted to play drums with my bands. But I was instantly hooked with the psychology behind copy, the decision-making aspect. So that actually made me move to the copywriting side of things. And I work mostly with B2B software companies who are kind of lost in the crowd, especially now with competition, AI, all of that, and struggle to differentiate themselves.
Okay, you don't hear often the combination of someone with an engineering background and more of a marketing one, which is quite unique. But how would you describe what is a conversion alchemy? What does this person do?
Yeah, so I see conversion alchemy. Think of alchemy or like a chemical process, right? I see it as a combination of three things. So one is the copy, the other one is the user experience, and the last one is the psychology and decision making aspect. So think about it this way: the copy is kind of the catalyst, then UX is the container, and the psychology is kind of the energy source. So when you have this chemical or alchemical reaction, you get what is it, the conversion, right? So your message resonates and actually helps you get a better, more loyal customer for your product or service.
Nice. That's an interesting thing that I'm hearing from you is that you look at, say, content and conversion as a very scientific thing, and obviously you also have a way to test it, I guess. So what I would like really listeners to get out of the conversation of today is, first of all, to understand why good copy is something that leads to conversion, and then number two, what could be the process that they can use in order to get to a copy that really converts on their website.
Mm.
How did you
Yeah,
get
so
to the standing point where you are today? So how did you get to realize that good copy is actually more of a scientific process rather than just intuition or creativity?
yeah, so it was mostly through like learning everything that I've learned in the past. I took a couple of courses, learned from lots of people, mentors. But I saw when I jumped into the actual work that copy is, I had to learn all the research behind it. And I immediately understood that research is the biggest part of the process. It's probably 70% of the whole process of writing good copy. And from that moment, I realized, okay, if research is such a big part, there has to be some kind of formula, like almost a scientific process that if you get the right data in, you process it the right way, which is a strategy, then at the end you must have actually like the good way to convert prospects into actual customers, right? So I saw it as a very structured, very almost scientific process because I saw it as a series of inputs and outputs, and if you followed the right process you actually got a good final product. And I know maybe it stems from my background. The kind of programming engineering that I was doing was very much logical programming, it was industrial automation. So same thing, we had sensors inputs based on a set of conditions. We needed to activate outputs, whether it was valves or I don't know, pneumatic or electric systems. And probably because of that, I mapped what I was doing to this kind of marketing process as well.
Got it. Yeah, I would have expected nothing else from an engineer like you, right? And it's kind of nice that you bring a different perspective to marketing. You don't, as I said before, you don't often hear engineers that bring their background and their way of viewing life to marketing. So I think it's quite insightful. What I want to do with you is to break down these three pillars that you mentioned before, right? So help me get it right. You said there's the first part, which is research, then there is UX, and then there is psychology, right? Am I saying it correctly?
Hmm.
Can you please tell
Yeah,
me,
yeah,
like
yeah.
in a nutshell, like say, what's the value of research? What's the value of UX, and how does that apply to content? And then lastly, what's the value of psychology? How would you
Hmm.
describe each one of those in a nutshell?
Yeah, so the first one, the research, what I always say, it's we don't really read words when we actually read copy. We need to unpack meaning. And by that, I mean that people, when they land on your website or they read your email, or ever if you are in a meeting and have a sales deck, your prospects need to do some kind of work to understand and extract what those words mean for them. In order to make it as easy as possible for them, you need to be able to inject in your copy everything that they already know. So you need to match what they already know when they land on your website. You need to understand what they mean by exactly specific words. So that's why I always say you need to join the conversation that they already have in their minds when they land on your website or your marketing materials. And so for that, there's a very structured, again, process for research that I divide into three kind of layers that cover all of those three aspects. So the initial research, the UX, and the decision-making psychology.
So research is about making sure that the copy that you write matches the kind of what you said, the activity that
Yeah,
your
the
prospect
conversation.
already has in mind. So obviously, when they land on your website, they already have something like a question on their mind, and you want to make sure you answer to it. Then what about the second pillar? What about UX?
Yeah, so the UX is something that a lot of copywriters, I think, don't really value enough, which is even if you write the best copy possible, the best researched copy possible, if your copy is not easy to digest and it's not frictionless to consume, you can't convert people, right? So that's why I emphasize a lot of using the proper flow, the proper visual hierarchy when I write my copy or when I wireframe my copy as well. And yeah, it's the actual art of making it as easy as possible for people to consume the copy and to
Okay,
digest the copy.
that's very good. And then you said the third one, which is the psychology pillar. So what about that?
Yeah, so for the psychology decision making, if you think about it, we are not really selling a product or a service. What I like to think of is that we are selling a decision. And by that, I mean that even in any specific stage, whether it's a section of your website or whether it's a whole page, we are selling a set of micro decisions. So even if when someone lands on your homepage, they see the headline, the subhead, and the call to action. In that case, if it's a homepage, maybe your first micro decision that you have to sell them is to click on the next button or to head to the next page for that specific persona, right? So every persona will have a set of different micro decisions that they have to go through. And so I like to think in terms of micro decisions rather than, okay, we are here, we have to sell this product. This is the primary call to action. Let's go. They're going to convert, right? If we think of in terms of what's the next micro decision that they need to take, then it's easier for them to move and to complete that transformation.
Okay, got it. So you said this three pillars is actually what say makes your formula to get to great content. I guess that probably, like in the era of AI, one of the first questions that would come to mind would be like, okay, so why would I need to hire someone to create great copy for my website where I can do it with a few clicks just using AI? What would you reply to that?
So especially now, the trend is okay to get ChatGPT to ask it, hey, write me this homepage. Or even if you have maybe you have your voice and tone guidelines, you upload them to ChatGPT, you feed them to ChatGPT or to any LLM, and you're asking, hey, write me this headline or give me 20 headline variation. That's all good. That's all great, actually, especially if you were at the beginning, starting out and kind of in a rush, you have to get something out, right? But the whole process behind this, so the deep research, the UX, the psychology, is what actually allows you to make the copy first. It's super easy to write because it comes on its own almost when you have all the structure, data, and this process. But also it injects the copy with that humanness that if you just ask AI to write anything, it's probably going to lack the humanness, the specificity, the very vivid language, and also the other thing, it's your point of view. So in my work, what I do is to extract from my clients' organizations all the data on three different areas. So the internal areas, so I speak with a team, I try to get their specific point of view or insight out. The second area is the external, so prospects and customers. So we try to understand that transformation that needs to happen. And the final one is the market. So the competitors, try to see what they're doing well, what they're doing wrong, how we can position ourselves differently. So all of this actually allows you to create a very strong strategy, which is AI won't ever really give you, right? So you're missing deep research, the actual strategy, and from then you can actually write good copy that hits the specific points, that hits your messaging pillars and covers your point of view as well. So
Got it.
yes, you can get good first drafts with AI, but obviously you won't have this whole deep work that's behind it.
So you're saying AI can help you to get the first draft out there in a fast way, but then if you want to take this to the next level where it really makes a business impact, actually you have to do it yourself. And I really vouch for the first thing that you said, right? So AI almost seems too perfect. You have it with copy, you have it sometimes with video as well. They just seem too perfect. Whereas as humans, we also have kind of a more dirty way of structuring sentences. For example, well, if you hear me talking, absolutely, there's no way I can be flawless. So, for example, also when I write things with AI, I think we all do it. I then tend to kind of make it a bit more, say, less polished after I write it, just to
Yeah.
make sure that people understand it's me. So yeah, I
Yeah.
totally vouch for that. And also the second part, which you mentioned, which is more like AI obviously doesn't have the context of who your buyer is, what is it that they're looking for. So they kind of make a bit of more like plain vanilla copy, which is good for everyone, but not really like hitting the nail on the head with anyone.
Yeah, and also I would like to add that if you do this whole process of research, good strategy, and you inject your specific point of view, then AI is even better at writing good first drafts because it takes all of that input and it allows you to actually scale what you were already doing well, but scale it for obviously you can work with your team better to write the same kind of copy with the same voice and same points that you need to hit. So it's first good to get to actual good copy and then also to scale that.
I
Yeah,
know when
yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
It's more like an intuition. Yeah.
So why don't we dive deeper now into the three different pillars that you mentioned before? So you said it all starts with research. For the ones listening who want to kind of like try to do it themselves, right? How do you do good research to match your copy with what your buyers are looking
Yeah, so as I was mentioning, I see research kind of like an iceberg, and I always try to optimize my research process based on where the client is at. So I typically work with Series A to C companies, which typically have some customers, they have an email list, so we can do quite a lot of things. But even if you're a startup, there's ways that you can get started. And the first layer of this iceberg, so the visible layer, is kind of the surface layer, I call it, which is all the things that you have online available that tell you how your prospects or the market is speaking, what the language is like. So these are all public reviews on sites like G2 Crowd, Capterra, all of those reviews that are either reviews on your product or competitor products that you can jump in and kind of analyze and categorize by themes. Could be support tickets, chat support transcripts that you're already collecting. So all materials that you are already collecting, but typically a lot of companies don't really use for marketing. All of those can give you really good insights into the specific language and motivations, pains, anxieties that your customers, your audience has.
Okay, so
The-
the starting point you said could be like double. On one side, kind of like external platforms where you can collect, for example, feedback, reviews, even for other products. Say, for example, that, I don't know, you're selling a CRM solution, and then you go on G2, for example, and look at what other people are writing about other CRM solutions, right? And there you can spot kind of like pain points. And the other thing you mentioned would be more like internal material that you have,
Mhm.
like for example, support tickets or like everything that probably the marketing department hasn't read yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes even product usability tests that maybe you're running because you're improving product, those can be super helpful as well. Because a lot of times you see my users stumble on certain things, or they come up with objections maybe because they have experiences with other similar products. So you actually get ideas for messaging that you can use on your materials to address those objections and doubts.
Yeah, absolutely. I also have some
Yeah.
experience with that, where I noticed, like with my previous company, for example, after researching with the qualitative analysis with users, so talking to them, we also learned that they were referring to the same thing with like different terms. So, for example, you can talk about SEO or you can talk about ranking on Google, and then you want to use the same words that your users are using so that what you have on your website is matching the word that they already have in mind and it's familiar to them. Because, like, especially when you say, when you are the specialist, the risk is that you use words that your audience doesn't immediately get. And then that's kind of off putting.
Yeah, that jargon, that curse of
Yeah,
knowledge
exactly.
thing, that when you're super immersed in your product, you kind of
Yeah,
struggle to
exactly.
speak like normally. Yeah, totally.
Okay, so that would be the research part. The very final question on this, like, is there a way in which AI can accelerate the research part?
Yeah, I mean, of course, for analyzing huge sets of data, they're super handy. So whether you upload all the research, maybe like in interview transcripts to the AI and ask it to categorize it for you, that's super helpful. It's still not great at giving you verbatim pieces of data, maybe because it doesn't have that much of a context yet. A lot of especially if you have loads of data. The other thing, um, for AI, yeah, obviously transcriptions. So all those transcriptions, the AI transcription for interviews, those are super
Okay.
helpful as well. Yeah, those are mostly the ways that I've been using for the research
That's
part.
mostly how you use it. Okay, good. So let's say we have done the research part and then we move on with the UX parts. What can you tell us about good UX for copy?
Yeah, so for the UX, that's actually like the second layer of the research. It's kind of the UX layer, structural layer. And by that, I mean understanding how users, like prospects, consume your copy. So first, we want to see on the current website, for example, how are they moving through the pages? Where are they maybe hovering a bit too much because they struggle to understand something? How far down the page they are scrolling? Where do we see like rage clicks, maybe because something looks clickable or they want to click there, so it's important for them. So all of these little considerations help you understand in the context of your copy what is important, what maybe we should deprioritize, and how to structure the flow of your messaging, right, on a specific page. And I like to look at it page by page just because it's very contextual. So I like for the homepage, I want to see, okay, what's the next destination that we need to send them to? What are the things that we see are important for them? On a use case or persona page, maybe we want to see if language specifically resonates, if they spend some time reading something because it means that it's useful for them. So all of those little considerations. So to understand that, obviously heat maps, so platforms like Clarity or Hotjar, look at heat maps, click maps, user recordings as well. They're super helpful to understand the specific flow. So which page is the first one, second one, third one that they visit. Because a lot of the work that I do typically, a lot of times it's complete website redesigns as well. And so we also optimize the navigation because I think navigation is actually an underrated aspect of
Absolutely.
messaging copy. Because if you look, especially if you've looked at a lot of usability tests, a lot of user interaction data, you see that a lot of people to want to orient themselves, they hover on the navigation. They try to see, okay, do they have a page for me if I'm in procurement or in sales? And that's maybe the next page that they visit, right? So it's super important to have the right language and messaging and structure in the navigation as well. So yeah, to me, the UX side is understanding the flow in the context of your copy so that we can learn how to optimize it and structure it the right way.
Absolutely. I think you said something very important there. So, which also resonates with another interview that I just had with someone else, Dmitry Togrilyev, SEO expert from US, who said that, especially when it comes to SEO optimization, which is obviously another part of how you can look at content, it's not enough just to look at, for example, your competitors and how many existing pages that are covering that topic, but also how optimized they are for UX. Because it can very well be that, say, you have a page which covers a specific topic, but it's written in such a way that no one would really want to read it. So what I'm hearing from you is that what you're saying is that you should also look at more technical things like, for example, heat map or where users are scrolling, which I think it's super important to have a good understanding of the effectiveness of your copy on your page. Am I saying it correctly?
Yeah, yeah, totally. Especially now that Google values the EEAT, right, framework, I think a lot. So experience, authority, and all that. When you do this, when you follow this process the right way, and also keep into account the user experience, you kind of cover some of the SEO aspects as well. So when some of my client or prospects, potential clients that I speak to, they ask me, "Hey, like, do you also do SEO in your copy?" But when they ask it, typically what they mean is, do you stuff keywords in your copy so that we, in theory, we do SEO? But SEO, like, it's changed, as you probably know as well. So it's more about the experience, the humanness, the overall feel. Obviously, there are some technical aspects of SEO which I don't cover as well because that's the SEO job. But yeah, my work typically helps SEOs in this way.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. And then the other thing that you mentioned, it's about navigation. Totally agree with that. It's one of the most undervalued elements of web design and user experience. Navigation is crucial for, especially for first-time visitors, to number one, have a clear understanding of if your website is able to answer the business question they have in mind. So, do you offer what they're looking for mainly? Do you have the services that they're looking for? And then number two, understand how they should kind of read your website and find an easy solution to the thing that they're looking for.
Yeah, I love the read your website because it's not like a specific. When you think about it this way, it's actually read and move through the website.
Absolutely. And you
And
see that, say,
yeah,
hovering on the navigation, it's really like the first thing that a lot of people do, right? And if it's not done
yeah,
well, then you just miss an opportunity.
yeah, and maybe it also stems from I used to work with a lot of with e-commerce stores before I shifted and focused on SaaS. And when you watch so many usability tests, when you have a lot of products, a lot of categories, and you see people struggle, you realize how important it is for you to actually make it as evident and as apparent and as easy to find as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Would you like to then say something about would you like to clarify the last pillar, which is then psychology that kind of wraps together everything that we mentioned so far?
Yeah, so for the last part, decision making aspect, what I like to think for it to cover it the right way, it's kind of it's the last actual layer that we cover in our research as well, which is the deep underneath beneath the sea layer that a lot of companies don't really cover, which is understanding the transformation that customers need to take and why they act on a specific website. So the deeper motivations, and it's all about when we run interviews, for example, it's all about covering the before, during, and aspect of that transformation. So it's not about asking them what do you like about this product, or now that you're using, what do you plan on doing next, right? It's more about understanding the decision making process that's behind their entire journey. So when we speak to them, when we write surveys, we try to ask questions like, what was happening in your world that drove you to look for something different? Or what other solutions or alternative ways of doing what you were doing were you using at the moment? What drove you to look for something different, right? We want to understand those deeper triggers and the motivations. And then the during. So now that you're using this product, what are you able to do that you weren't able to before? And finally, of the after that you're using this product, what's the biggest problem that you are able to solve? That typically gives you a lot of insights on your value proposition, right? When you ask a specific single pointed question, it's very good language that you can actually use and mirror in your copy. Or if you had to recommend this product to someone else in your industry, what would you tell them? We want to extract as much as possible of that specific language so that we understand, okay, they were here at the beginning, now they're here, and we know exactly what happened, and we try to mirror that in the copy. And that's what I was saying, covering all those micro decisions, because we learned through all those different research touch points that we
Okay.
have.
And so the essential part about this pillar is really the fact that all this learning part cannot really occur, say, just from the theoretical part of what you have. So the essential part here is really talking to user. This is what I'm getting from what you're saying. It's not something that you can do just by reading blogs. It's also not really something that you can do only looking at your, I don't know, Google Analytics or Hotjar. So there comes a part when you really have to go talk to users and learn from them. Do I say it correctly?
Yeah, totally. And I would always recommend at least running these interviews, having these chats, or even just a survey to get some qualitative data, as if possible, at least every 6 months, because market changes, product changes. You want to always have kind of a fresh perspective on what's happening inside your audience's minds.
Got it. And so, how do you do that? How do you, first of all, find people to answer to this question? And also, what's your conversation with a business owner, which I can imagine is like, yeah, why should I ask, my visitors, website visitors, what do they think about my website? Isn't it unprofessional to do?
Well, typically for visitors, it's more of like for actual website visitors, we might run a website polls. So those are those little survey pop-ups that you see on website where you ask simple multiple choice questions, but that are still useful to help you understand who your audience is, kind of what persona they are, what their motivations are on the website or on a specific page if they can't find a specific piece of information. So that's something that I would do for visitors other than looking at those heat maps, user recordings. The other thing that we typically do for this qualitative aspect is more of interviewing customers or people who maybe were customers and canceled. And so in that case, we ask our clients to just look at their list. They typically have an email list, customer list, CRM, and to just select we typically try to select like 20, 30, 50, depending on the response that they expect to get. And try to at least interview between 7 to 10 customers, because that's the number that gives you around 80%, 90% of the insights that you want to get. And we might offer incentive. That's all depending on what the client and the responsiveness of the list is. And then we structure those questions with the before, during, and after process.
Excellent. So I think that you really helped us say, Dan, how everyone listening can start optimizing the copy of the website. So you said it starts with researching, trying to understand what your buyer has in mind when they come, for example, on your website. Number two is about optimizing the copy for UX. So make it in such a way that it's easy to read and understand. Here, tools like, for example, Hotjar or heat maps can really help you. And then the third one, really like make sure you talk to them. So for example, if you have some customers already go on your CRM, ask them if you can have conversation about your website, and in exchange, you might offer something which is valuable for them.
Mm.
And so I understand there's a lot of like custom made here. My final question for you would be, out of your experience, is there anything that you see as a recurring pattern, like something that often goes wrong or something that you often hear from the people you interview?
The one of the main ones is for customers to understand why the company is different, and how this company expresses it. So the differentiation, because they have a lot of decision, a lot of competitors to choose from. And the second one is if they are inside a buying committee, especially B2B, you are CMO, you need to convince the IT manager or procurement. You need to find in the copy something that you can take on to that other persona and convince them, right? So differentiation is one, the biggest one, and the other one is finding elements that you take on to the other people in your decision making unit and convince them.
Nice. Okay, so this is awesome insight. So that means that what you notice is that a lot of websites are actually lacking how what they offer is different from the competition. And then number two, they kind of don't ask themselves the question of like, how do I help say, my champion, right, within the company
Mhm.
to support choosing me over the rest with kind of material that this person can use with their colleagues. I think that's brilliant insight. It's not really something that you hear often. So, well, I want to thank you a
Mhm.
lot, Chris, for the insight that you share with us today. As a final question, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so people can find me on my website, conversionalchemy.net, where I have a scorecard. If you want to try it, it should give you a pretty good idea of where you stand in terms of what we talked about. So the research, the UX, and the copy elements. And typically on LinkedIn. So if you want to just have a chat or see what I write almost daily, you can check out there.
Awesome. That's amazing. Thanks a lot, Chris.
Thank you, Fede. Bye.